So I'm Amy Lee, and as you might have guessed from my previous video, I'm psychotic. So what does it mean to be psychotic? Well, that's basically when your brain doesn't function the same way as everybody else. So all that's control of movement, emotion, thinking, and perception, that's all kind of different. So when you have psychosis, you usually lost contact with reality. But what does it mean? So reality is what we perceive with our senses. So that's all like hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, and tasting. When you have psychosis, you perceive those things differently from other people. So, what are the symptoms of psychosis? Well, there are 4 categories of symptoms for psychosis. First off, there's positive symptoms, which does not mean that they're positive. It just means that it had something to what is perceived as normal. Then there's the negative symptoms, which remove something from what is perceived as normal. The cognitive symptoms and the affective symptoms. So what are those? First off, positive symptoms. Those are hallucination, delusion, weird behavior, all that kind of stuff. Then the negative symptoms, which are trouble talking, loss of energy, loss of motivation, and being antisocial. So basically, you don't want to see anyone, or you don't feel like doing anything anymore. There's cognitive symptoms, which are trouble concentrating, memory trouble, problem with executive function, learning disabilities, all that kind of stuff. Then there's the affective symptoms, which are trouble sleeping, anxiety, depression, irritability, impulsivity, all that kind of stuff. So now we talked a little bit about what are the symptoms, but it doesn't mean just because, I have trouble sleeping, so I must have psychosis. It's not like that. Those symptoms are in a lot of other disorders too. So just because you have some of these symptoms does not mean that you have psychosis per se. But if you have some of these symptoms, especially positive and negative symptoms, and you think that, well, maybe I do have psychosis, I would recommend talking to a doctor. So, positive symptoms, let's get back to that. What are delusions? Well, delusions are something that you believe that not everyone else believes. So, let's say you believe that you're in a coma and that you're currently sleeping and that people are trying to wake you up. Well, there's no proof of that, and you're the only one who's really gonna think that. So, people are not gonna be, hey, you're in a coma. Well, if they are, maybe you're in a coma. Or maybe they're messing with you. Or whatever. But, yeah. That's basically it for delusion. And then there's the hallucination. As you might have seen from my previous video, which was an example of auditory hallucination. And that was basically where I heard stuff that nobody else heard. So, basically, I always hear all these different voices, and they just talk at the same time, and it's pretty awful. But whatever. Yeah, so there's auditory hallucination, but there's also visual hallucination, which you might be like, oh, look at that dude over there, and your friends are gonna be like, well, there's no dude over there, and you're like, yeah, but there is one, I can see him, but your friends cannot see him, so that's an hallucination. If you hear something and you're like, oh, did you hear that sound, and everyone else is like, no, I did not, well, that's an hallucination. Or let's say you feel something and there's nothing. Let's say you feel bug crawling on your skin, but there's no bugs on your skin. Well, that's an synesthetic hallucination. You can have also olfactory hallucination and gustatory hallucination. Okay, so you might be thinking right now, well, what you're describing kind of sounds like schizophrenia, and that's because schizophrenia is a type of psychosis, as well as bipolar might sometimes be a type of psychosis. Like you might have a bipolar, and let's say you're feeling high, and you feel like you can do anything. You're the best person in the world. Well, that might be a delusion. I say you're feeling down. You might hear voices telling you, "Oh, you're the worst thing that ever lived on this earth," or something like that. Then there are schizoaffective disorder, which is basically when you have symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar, or depression, or a lot of affective symptoms, but a lot of schizophrenic symptoms too. There's a lot of different category. I'm not going to name them all. There's psychosis because of drugs, which is basically when you take like LSD, pot, or amphetamines, or even like alcohol. Those can sometimes start a psychosis, but they usually last just as long as the effect of the drug or alcohol lasts, and then they stop. But sometimes, especially if it's not your first one, you might need to see medical treatment. Then there's psychotic depression, which is when you're depressed, and a lot of time people are gonna hear voices, but you're not gonna get the high of bipolar, so you're just gonna be depressed all the time. And yeah, that's basically it. Then there's organic psychosis, which is when, let's say, you hit your head real bad and then you start hallucinating. Well, that's another type of psychosis. And a lot of time when you go to a doctor and you're like, "Oh, I think I might have psychosis," they're gonna do a bunch of tests to make sure that it's not an organic psychosis. Delusion trouble, which is basically when you don't have hallucinations, you don't have that much stuff, but you have delusions. So you're like, life is not real, I'm currently dreaming. Or it can be something different. I'm just using this as an example because sometimes my voices tell me that. And then there's the last one I'm going to talk about today, which is psychosis not otherwise specified, which is what I have. And that's basically when you have a lot of different symptoms that don't go in one simple category. So you might have some symptoms of schizophrenia, some of schizoaffective, some of all that kind of stuff, and they basically don't know where to put you. So it's usually a temporary diagnosis, but sometimes it can last all your life. But yeah. So that's basically it for today, guys. So I'm gonna end it on here. So talk to you later.